Look at how many lucky 13s are on the obverse of the Great Seal. We've already seen the 13 stars of glory over the eagle's head. In the eagle's claws there are 13 arrows, 13 leaves on the branches hold 13 olives, and there are 13 stripes on the shield. Perhaps having 13 colonies was no accident. Curiously, the eagle only has 9 tail feathers. Everything has a meaning in symbolism.
Notice how it's very busy. Lot of intersection diagonally lines, you can't make out what's there. But let's get rid of the background noise, get rid of all the diagonal lines that doesn't belong there, and let's reverse the principle of Rorschach and take what's in the background and bring it to the forefront and see what's there. Because once we do that, we find out it's quite obvious that there is another Illuminati owl and that it is perched on something that looks like an arrow. That is what they don't want you to see. Once you see this owl here and compare it to the other one on the left-hand side of it, it becomes very obvious that this is an owl.
Our founding fathers were involved in some things that historically have not been really discussed.
And that's one of the things that intrigued people about National Treasure, I think. It suddenly made them aware of things that they'd been looking at, all their lives. The triangle, the all-seeing eye that's on the pyramid in the back of the dollar. All those things had Masonic beginnings.
So what I made of the observation here was the pant leg. I said, is this a Freemason sort of thing? Why has he got his left pant leg? That's his left pant leg, right? Rolled up. And you can see it here, although they're blocking it, right? But it's clearly rolled up. Why would he have his pant leg rolled up? The initiation ceremony itself is notoriously particular. It involves the initiate being blindfolded with his left trouser leg rolled up to the knee, right? His left trouser leg rolled up to the knee, right?
Let's look at the Capitol building rotunda. This center point of American democracy figured prominently in Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol. Investigative mythologist William Henry has interpreted the significance of the Capitol building as the solemn temple at the heart of America. Looking up through the oculus in the Capitol dome, we see Constantino Brumitti's huge fresco entitled Apotheosis of George Washington. The word apotheosis means elevation of a man into God. George Washington is sitting on a rainbow up in the clouds surrounded by 13 maidens and flanked by the goddesses Liberty and Victory. Clearly elevates Washington into some kind of solar deity. 6 allegorical groupings in a hexagonal arrangement tell stories centered on the ancient gods Mercury, Vulcan, Ceres, Minerva, Neptune, and Columbia. What does all this pagan symbolism have to do with the official history of the United States? Nothing. The goddesses personified on both sides of the Atlantic as nature, reason, liberty, freedom, and Columbia are all esoteric references to the Egyptian goddess Isis. Following the goddess Liberty upward, we see how the entire District of Columbia was originally surveyed by George Washington in 1791.
They are signs of Satanism, but we know there is a more powerful symbol, and that is the cross. Cross.
You are tuned in to God's Property Radio. Here are your hosts, Sam and Dan.
I go by Sam, and welcome to God's Property Radio. It's been a while since we did a broadcast, and it's actually June now, and Dan, of course, is still slightly under the weather and not with me right now. We've been really busy running the campground, trying to get things in order as, just before school gets out. That's when it just gets nuts for us here. So what we did was we planned ahead because we knew things were going to get crazy, although we didn't know that Dan would get sick. So this ended up working out pretty well. Back in December, we decided, why don't we just record a bunch of interviews, as many as we can do, while we're here hanging out and we don't have as much to do during the off season. So we recorded this episode, which you're about to hear, with Ralph Epperson. It was actually, I think, a week after we did a coin toss with Ralph Epperson on the legal system. And I asked Ralph if he knew anything about symbology. because that's something that's really intrigued me ever since I kind of got into the studies of the New World Order and everything, is understanding, like, what do these things mean? And then you start to realize, oh, well, some of these things mean like 7 things, and so it gets really confusing. So Ralph was a really good sport, and he threw together, a bunch of stuff that I didn't even expect him to. I wouldn't say that Ralph is an expert on symbology or anything, but he threw together a pretty interesting conversation, I think, that will at least spark some interest for those of you who are interested in the topic. There's actually a book out there that I was really interested in interviewing somebody on, by Dr. Kathy Burns. She put together a book called Masonic and Occult Symbols, and I know that Chris Pinto has referenced that book in one of his films. I couldn't get a hold of Kathy, so thanks to Ralph for putting together something totally on the fly for me. And I think it went pretty well, and I'll sum up my thoughts on the interview on the outro. But if you haven't heard of Ralph Epperson, Ralph has been doing what he does for a very long time. He's an excellent teacher. I forget which episode of the Coin Toss series it was. It was, one of the maybe like episode 6 or 7 or 8 or something like that. But he did an excellent job at just going document by document through what he was doing. He has a website. I think everybody should go check it out. I know that some of his books are instrumental in some of the people that we speak with, like Leonard Ulrich is referenced The Unseen Hand, which is a 488-page book. It's like $13 on his website. You can get many other books on his website for about the same price, and pretty lengthy books. He's got some DVDs, so I'll just give a little shout out. You can check out ralph-epperson.com. Definitely go check that out, or you can even call his company called Publius Press. Telephone number is 520-886-4380. He also does interviews for those of you who are maybe want to get more information on some things. He's really down-to-earth guy, and this is kind of like what he likes to do. So if anybody wants to hit him up, go ahead. Without further ado, I guess I'll get into the episode. This is episode number 21, Concealing and Revealing with Ralph Epperson.
Here we go. This discussion is under the blood covenant of Yahshua, explicitly without prejudice and under reserve.
Ralph, we would love to formally understand Ralph Epperson's testimony. If you want to just walk us through that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll make it very brief if I can. I live in Tucson, Arizona. I went to the University of Arizona, and after I graduated, I went for my first job in California. And so I didn't know anything about California, and I voted in the 1962, Pat Brown was running against Richard Nixon. And I listened to the issues, and I said, well, I like Nixon better than I do Brown, so I voted for Nixon. And but after I voted, I said, that wasn't a very well-informed vote. So friends of mine, people that I talked to said, yeah, I told them that. And they said, yeah, why don't you join the Young Republicans? And I did. I walked in, and the first guy I met was Jim. And Jim later became a good friend. I didn't know him know him at all. But he said, why are you here, Ralph? I said, I'm here to learn how to vote in California, how to vote on which governor, which congressman, and which Proposition 101 and which judge. He said, no, you're not. You're here to read. I said, no, Jim, I don't like to read. He said, read. And he gave me a book called None Dare Call It Treason, which was a big seller. Yeah, no, Treason first.
Oh, okay.
None Dare Call It Treason, written by John Stormer. And it was a big seller. Millions of copies were sold, and we were using it in the Goldwater campaign to get people interested in Goldwater. So I got started. I read that book, and I said to myself, this guy's right. Because I'd never heard this, never even considered it. It wasn't even laughingly pointed out to me that there are people who believe there's a conspiracy in college. They never jokingly even brought it up. So I had no idea. My parents never knew anything about this. My brother, who was 2 years older, he didn't know anything about it. So I started reading, and after I read that book, I started reading, and I kept walking up a ladder. It's climbing a ladder. And that's what I learned. When you start out, you start at the bottom rung, And you keep climbing, and the more you climb, the more frightening it becomes, because you realize how sinister this thing is, how evil it is. And so I believe I'm at the top of the ladder. I believe I now know exactly why they're doing this, who they are, what their goals are, how they've accomplished much of what they wanted to do. And there's certainly gaps that can be filled in, but I don't care to fill them in. I think I know enough, and as I have probably told both of you in previous discussions, I said, we are all teachers. And if we don't educate people, we're going to lose a nation. That's how serious this problem is. And I think if we ever lose it, we'll never get it back. So I'm saying that we are all teachers. Everybody in this nation is our student body. Every building we're in is our campus. Every conversation is a classroom. So we've got to teach, and we've got to make sure we can educate with good information, reliable and accurate and documented. And that's what I've done for 50 years of my life. I've tried to make it simple, keep it easy to read, easy to understand, and certainly easy to accept, because it's all documented. I don't make statements I cannot prove. When I can't prove it, I'll tell you, this is my theory, but it seems to fit the facts, but I could be wrong, and I'll say that. So that's basically it. I've written 4 books. I've got 20 DVDs on the market, many of which are on the internet now. It's probably 6 or 7. I've got 4 of them coming up. They're going to be entered within the next couple of weeks. And then I've got 1 more to convert over to a DVD and then get that one on. So I'll make a total of 21. And they're all easy to read, watch, understand. Sometimes they're a little bit longer, but that's the only way. If you're going to teach, you go to school for 20 some hours for a semester or whatever it is. And so you got to spend some time, and that's what some of these are. But some of them are short and brief, half an hour, an hour and a half, whatever. But that's what I do. I try to educate. I'm a teacher, so that's why I'm doing the talk show. I'm listening. You people are my students, and the listening audience is students as well, and I'm trying to educate. So go ahead.
Okay, so when I don't know, did you say were you brought up in a Christian home, or when did you come to know Jesus as your Savior?
I was a lukewarm Catholic. My parents were Catholics, and my brother and I both were not active. We didn't go to Catholic schools. I was never really an altar boy. There was a short period of time for a couple of months at a convent for a while, and then I dropped out of that. But I had some marital problems, and my marriage, we got married in the Catholic Church. The woman I met and ultimately married was a Catholic, so that was a lucky break. So we got married in the church, and but 7 years later we had troubles, and we separated. And so it just ripped me apart. I didn't know why we were separating. So a friend of mine said, "How would you like to talk to a pastor?" So I said, "I'll talk to anybody that can help me save my marriage." So we sat down, and he said, "Tell me a little bit about you." And I did. I'm a Catholic, and he said, "Do you have a personal relationship with Jesus?" I said, "No." He said, "Would you like one?" I said, "You mean I can do this?" He said, "Of course." So he got this thing out called a Bible. I was not familiar with the thing called a Bible. Catholics don't teach from the Bible. So he started showing me things that he knew that I believed, I could repeat. And he kept showing me the Bible where the things I believed in were contrary to the Scriptures. And I said, "Well, why would we do that? Why would we believe something that's not in the Bible?" So he talked about getting baptized and he asked me if I was baptized, and I said yes. And he said, "Well, how?" And I said, "They sprinkled water on my head." And he told me why, where that came from. So I decided, he said, the word baptizo in the New Testament is immersed. "So were you immersed?" I said, "No." So he said, "Well, I would urge you to consider becoming immersed. It's not required that you for salvation, but it is an act of obedience to Jesus, and it's a commitment that you're making that he really is your Savior." So, but I said, "Well, let me mull that around." So about 3 weeks later, I was immersed, and I'm a fundamentalist. I'm not a non-denominational. I just believe Jesus. I believe the Bible, and I believe that now. Looking back in conclusion, I've been doing this for 50 years, and it didn't dawn on me as it was happening, but now looking back over those 50 years, it seems like every time I needed the next step up the ladder, it was provided. I was being brought along, and it didn't dawn on me that God was doing it, but now I believe he was. Because as I said, I think I now know the whole nature of this conspiracy, how it's also biblical. It's right out of the Bible. And and I'm convinced I was right, but I'm right in my conclusion from my research. So that's basically me. I live to cry, I pray. I don't go to church much anymore because the churches in Tucson are all changed. They're not preaching the gospel anymore, the fundamental Bible. I've had episodes with 4 different churches trying to get them to listen to my research, and they won't listen, so I've dropped out. And but I still pray, and I still acknowledge Jesus. Before I go to bed at night, I thank him for life and for his saving me. And I watch TV shows that sometimes are pastors, and I can see where they're lying, and so I click it off. But that's basically it. I'm a Christian, and I'm pleased that I am. I'm saved.
Amen.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. Well, then, Ralph, as I had said before to you, I really want to get into those rungs that you're talking about on that ladder, as the Lord moved you through and taught you all those things. But I do think Sam wanted to spend some time, as you mentioned, in symbology first. So could you explain for our listeners what symbology is and what effect and bearing it has on our world today?
Yes. In fact, I'm flipping through my book. I've got a quote in the first couple of pages. I might have the wrong one, but hold on. Here it is. No, that's not the one. I think it's in this book. Hold on a second. I want to quote to you, tell you what symbology is for and what it is. Oh boy, hold on. I'm sorry. This was not. I should have had this out because I was thought about it, but I didn't do it. Anyway, symbology serves 2 purposes. One, it conceals the truth from the dummies.
Right.
And the second thing is it's used as a way to introduce to the other, I'll call them illuminated ones, that you're one of them. In other words, you know the symbology, the secret behind the symbol, and he'll use it, put it on a book or a cover or something, and you and I, the average citizen, don't know what it means. It's just nice or whatever it is, but it means something to other illuminated ones that you're one of them. So it serves a very important purpose, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. What purpose does it serve?
Cool.
But I can't find the quote, so I'm sorry, because it's a perfect quote for this subject. But I can't find it.
Do you know who the quote was by?
Yeah, Manly P. Hall.
Oh, yeah. I bet that could be Googled.
Well, it could be. I thought I put it in the book here, but I'm flipping through pages and I can't find it. So, symbology. Well, I can't find it, so I guess I could be wrong. Anyway, that's what it means. It conceals from the world, but it's a purpose, and I'll show you examples of that when we cover a thing called the lion's paw. When we get into that, you'll see that people use it as a way to educate others that they're illuminated, and that means that they're aware of the ancient mystery religion called Babylon, and that they're part of it. That's the way they take pictures. Have pictures taken of them giving the sign, and we'll cover that later tonight. Okay, let's start, if I may, with the dollar bill. At the back of the dollar bill, we all carry one. On the back of the dollar bill, we see 2 circles, and the words on the bottom, someplace, Great Seal of the United States. So now we know that the Great Seal has 2 sides, 2 circles. There it is, the Great Seal of the United States. Now, mostly seals only have one side. Now, what's a seal? It was originally started by the kings who would fold, say, a letter or correspondence, and they drip wax on the fold to seal it, and then the king would push his ring into the wax as a way to notify the recipient that it's an official king-approved document. They would use it also as a way to ratify a treaty or a consignment or something. He'd seal it, and then they would cool. Now, let's say that someone between A and B found the document and broke it open. It would destroy the seal. So the person, you can't redo it, because when you cooled it or heated it again, the seal, the imprint left by the ring, would disappear. So it served a purpose like that. So we have two sides of the seal. And that's a question. Why? Why do we need a second side? And Manly P. Hall says the second side, the pyramid side, is far more important than the eagle side. But we'll talk about both symbols tonight. So let's now go to the dollar bill. First of all, I want you to notice above the eagle, in fact, you get a dollar bill out of your wallet or purse, you can read it, carry along with me. I'll try to explain some things. You'll notice we got an eagle, which we'll cover in a minute. But above his head, we'll start with this. We have what's called a burst, and it's got a 6-pointed star made of 13 5-pointed stars. But so if you draw the lines to make a 6-pointed star, you'll notice that what you've drawn is a triangle with 1 point down, and the other one is 1 point up, but one's over the other. So if we can draw that and then transport it over on the pyramid side, we're going to see that it fits, and that the points point to letters. Now, if you lay it down, and we'll use a clock, looking at the clock face, say at 10 o'clock, which would be approximately, over where the 10 is on your watch. So the first point points to the letter A. The second point points to a blank space, which means there's only going to be 5 letters. And then the one at 2 o'clock points to the letter S. And then at the bottom, it starts at the N. At the 8 o'clock to the letter N. And then at 6 o'clock, it points to the letter O, second O in ordo. And in the 4 o'clock point, it points to the letter M. There's a word in your dictionary called an anagram. Anagram is the reassembling of the letters to conceal the real word. And this is an anagram. ASNOM is an anagram. You reassemble the letters and you get MASON. So now we know who designed the Great Seal of the United States. It was the Masonic Lodge. But it was approved unanimously in 1782. So whether you were a Mason or not, they approved it as the Great Seal. Now let's talk about the star itself as concealing the number 13. And we're going to talk a lot about the number 13 tonight, and also the numbers 32 and 33 as we go through this. If you draw the lines only, as we just did over the seal, over the star, you'll notice that there are 6 outer points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In other words, there's, I'll just make it easy. There's 6 points on the star. Then if you count the inner spaces, there's 7 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 around, and then of course I guess it's called a hexagram or 6-sided object in the center. So it's 7. So 6 plus 7 equals 13. That's one of the reasons why the 6-pointed star is so important to especially the Masons. Now let's go to the eagle side, and we'll look at the eagle itself, and if you can, you can count, blow it up and magnify it. You can count 32 feathers on its left wing and 33 feathers on its right wing. Now that's not a mistake. The artist intentionally did that as a way of concealing the two numbers 32 and 33. Plus, the eagle is looking towards the 33rd, the wing with the 33 feathers, the right wing. So this is a way, once again, to conceal the Masonic involvement in our nation. Now, if we go to the face of the dollar bill, we're doing this, by the way, according to a DVD that I made, and they're not in any sequence. They were in a sequence, and I had covered originally first material first to help explain these, so it's kind of at random now that we're getting into it. if you notice, you combine the United States of America, count the letters, and the numbers $1, they total 33. So there's the number of the United States of America, and the letters in $1, they total 33. Let's talk about the eagle. One of the connections back to the Masonic Club. By the way, there's 32 degrees in Masonry, and the 33rd degree is honorary, and only a small percentage of the Masons ever become a 33rd. I remember in my civics class many years ago in high school that we were taught that there was a great debate amongst our founders whether or not to make the eagle, the bald eagle, or the wild turkey our national bird. But that was once again a scam, because the eagle was always going to be our bird, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So they presented this that, well, we really discussed both sides, and we felt the eagle was more representative of America, whatever it is. But I want to read 6 quotes, 6 quotes to show you that the eagle is symbolic of something else. And all of these quotes come from Masons. I'm not going to identify the source because it's not necessary, but just listen and hear. These are quotes written by Masons about the eagle and why it's our national bird. The eagle is a symbol of initiation. The eagle is of great antiquity, a symbol of the sun. The eagle was sacred to the sun. The eagle was a bird consecrated to the sun. The eagle represented the Egyptian sun god, Amun-Ra. And the last one is, it's not really a quote, it's a comment. Apparently when they said, why would they want the eagle? Because the eagle can look direct, they reportedly claim, the eagle can look directly at the sun. You and I do that, we go blind. But the eagle can do it without going blind. So that would be a symbol of the eagle is in direct contact with the sun that you and I can't get except through the eagle. And that's why we have an eagle as our national bird.
Wow.
If you see the old Russian, the communist nation, they had a seal as well. And it's 2, it looks like corn stalks, or wheat stalks, kind of folded over in a semicircle, each one on each half, wrapped in some sort of words on the bottom. And then there's a drawing of the globe in the center, but underneath the globe there's a semicircle and 32 rays sticking out of it as if it's a sun. In other words, the circle, if it could be shown all together, it was clear, it's not colored, or gray or dark or black, it's white, and there's no color there, so it represents the sun, and 32 rays sticking out of it plus the sun would be 33. The United Nations has a symbol like that as well. It's got it's a global look at the Earth from up above. So you're looking at down to the North Pole of the globe, and then it's spread out. And it's divided by lines. And if you count the number of boxes or semicircles, there's 32 of them, and then there's a circle in the center for a total of 33. So one can only ask, why would Russia have a sun with 32 degrees? Why would the United Nations have a symbol of the Earth, round, clear, with 32 divisions plus the 33rd? We could talk about that later, maybe. If you go to a picture of the United Nations Security Council, they sit in a round table, so you can face everyone at the same time. But up above them are 32 lights, individual lights stuck in the ceiling to reflect down on the circle underneath it. So 32 plus the circle is 33. The Olympic torch that people carry to around the world once it's lit at Mount Olympus, they carry it as a way to introduce it around the world. There's Olympics coming. Happens to be 32 inches long, and the flame above it would be the 33rd. It is lit at Mount Olympus by women on Mount Olympus, where the sun, all the gods lived in the Greek or the Roman. I guess it was, I don't know which is Roman Empire, all the gods lived on Mount Olympus. So that's where the torches originally lit, but not by a light. They use a reflecting it's like a flying saucer. Maybe a better example would be a frisbee upside down, and then the sun shines and it's all focused, and they put the torch in there, and that starts it being lit. One of the great pictures of America during World War II was when they raised the flag over the Iwo Jima, and the flag that came was later brought to the United States, and Roosevelt wanted it shown around the country in 33 cities. Isn't that interesting? Why not 32 or 107, but notice 33. The 33rd degree northern latitude is very important. The first 33rd degree Council of the Masons was formed in Charleston, South Carolina, underneath the 33rd degree latitude. We'll talk about it a little bit later in other contexts, but once we start with that, we'll notice the 33rd is important then geographically. Hey,
Ralph.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you here. Just so both you know, I'm feeling really lightheaded and dizzy, so I may not be responding very often, but I am here. Just
okay,
so
that's
you guys
fine.
know. I'm actually gonna lay down over here and ice my head and listen for a bit.
Yes, I understand. That's quite all right.
I'm here with you, Russ, Ralph, and I've got like Google Images up, so every time you mention something, I've been looking at it. So
okay, well, very good. The runway 33 is where those space shuttles land at John Kennedy Space Center. Runway 33. The first Sovereign Grand Commander named Henry C. Clausen, 33rd degree, wrote a book called Masons Who Helped Shape This Nation. He reports that the manager of the Apollo program was a 33rd degree Mason. His name was Kenneth Kleineck. His brother was the head Sovereign Grand Commander of the Masons. When Ronald Reagan became an honorary Mason, 33rd degree honorary, I've got pictures of that. Reagan became a 33rd, and that's on the internet. You can see it as well. But the 7 original astronauts were appointed. Of that, number 4 were identified as Masons. Gus Grissom was supposed to be one of those original 7, was supposed to be the first man in space. But Gus Grissom didn't like what they were doing with the Apollo program, so he actually hung a lemon on a hanger around the capsule that was being used to mock up as a way of expressing his distrust with this thing. And I believe that Gus Grissom was later murdered because he was going to blow the whistle that it wasn't a good program. And but in any event, after he died, the reason they chose him was because his name is not Gus, that's a nickname. His full name is Virgil Grissom. So if you count those letters, there's 13 in there. Once again, the number 13. So when he was murdered, they could have moved Buzz Aldrin up, but Buzz Aldrin doesn't have 13 letters. But Neil Armstrong, not one of the original 7, his name does have 13 letters in it. So Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon, allegedly. Sometime we'll get into that. I'll show you. I can prove it easily that Neil Armstrong never went to the moon. Neither did Buzz Aldrin. Well, I could prove that. But anyway, let's just leave it at that. Oh, yeah, then Buzz Aldrin took a little flag up on the moon and unfurled it and had a little ceremony of some form. And then that flag was presented to the Masons, and it's now in Washington, D.C., I'm told. Okay, now, okay, here we go. Oh, yeah, now here's a picture of a cemetery in France, World War II, and it's an aerial view like from a helicopter. And you can see there are 8 rectangles laid out, and each one separated by trees, a row on all 4 sides of the rectangle. And there's 4 rectangles, each of which has 2 rows on it. So if you count the 8 rectangles times 4, you get 32. Then if you count the number of trees in the lining, the top and the bottom, they're rectangles, they number 32. So there's an interesting connection. 32 shows up twice. 4 times 8 is 32, and the number 32 shows up in the planting of the trees that separate each of the 4 sections, 8 sections. There's a snake mural in Tucson painted on a wall. It's got 32 skulls drawn on the side of the thing, and of course the skull would become 33. Quetzalcoatl, there's a drawing of Quetzalcoatl coming to Earth on a ladder of 32 rungs. So heaven would be the 33rd, and Quetzalcoatl was a sun god. The Mayans had a symbol of the sun. It was a block, round block, cut with like a marble in the center, half of it. It was curved to represent the sun, and then there's 32 rays sticking out from the sun itself, so the sun plus 32 would be 33. And the reason they do this, I believe, is because there are 32 vertebrae in the human backbone.
Right, right.
And the 33rd would be the skull. The skull is really connected to the backbone, and it's the top part of the spine. So
Yep.
32 plus the skull would be 33.
Yep. That's funny because I've been going to a chiropractor for about a year, and I didn't even know that there were 33 vertebrae, you know.
Well, there's like 32 bones in your foot, I'm told. We got 32 teeth in our mouth, so the number is important to the human body.
Mm-hmm.
There's a group of people I'm thinking Thailand, called the Padang people, and their women wear necklaces. They're put on their head, and then as the person grows, there's more space, and they put another rung. It's like a ring on their neck, and then they live the rest of their life with 32 of those rungs on their neck, plus the head would be 33. Now, what that means, I don't know. I can't interpret it, but it's just an interesting. Once again, apparently the Padang people know about the importance of 32 and 33. Now, I'm going to continue. I've got an Egyptian winged symbol of protection. It's got a circle in the center, and on each side there's wings, and if you count the number of feathers in the wings, there's 32 on either side. I showed a picture of a Indian symbol, drawing of a round circle with a headband on it, but there's a halo behind it with rays dividing it into 32 sections. A group called the Ballet Folklorico de Mexico came to Tucson and danced. Very colorful, beautiful costumes. And as they're dancing, there's a huge sundial, a huge symbol of the sun, I would guess probably 8 to 10 feet around, beautiful, gold and painted and shiny. And you count the number of rays, there's 32. I got another Indian symbol of a round, like a shield, and there's 32 little X's on it, and of course then the circle would be 33. The Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, France, has what they call the rose window. It's a beautiful stained glass series of circles and numbers. If you count the second row from the top, there's 32 divisions. In other words, 32 plus the one circle is 33.
Right.
The Catholic Church has a monstrance. It carries the wafer, which they represent symbolically, of course, the body of Jesus. And I got a picture of Pope John Paul II, I guess it was. He's holding this thing, and it's beautiful, and it's got 32 rays sticking out of it as well. 32 plus the circle will be 33. People magazine in 1985 had a little article stating that the Pope wears a traditional cassock. It covers it from head to foot, and it's tied in the middle by, I guess, some sort of a band or tied or whatever. And so I waited until I could find a picture of the Pope coming full length, coming towards the camera. And I got a picture of John Paul II wearing his cassock, and I counted there are 32 buttons. So if the 32 is a traditional number, whether you're 5'6" or 6'7" and a Pope, you wear the traditional cassock with 32 buttons, and then the skull becomes 33. In 1991, Las Vegas was going to build a pyramid casino, and they had a giant model, I guess, of it. It's probably, I would guess, 3 feet high and in a pyramid shape. And then it shows it's done by the architect to show the people of Las Vegas what this thing's going to be. And there's a picture of them, people gathered around and looking at it. And there are 32 gold layers, meaning the floors, like layers of stone, 32 plus the capstones there for a total of 33.
Right.
World War I ended on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. So we got 11, 11, 11, totaling 33. Now I've got a thing, I'm going to find it. I've got slides, but I want to read it because it's a little easier to follow. Fidel Castro is a communist. I'm going to tell you a little bit, and maybe the reason he's there where he is because he's telling us with concealed symbols that he's a 33rd degree Mason. Now that doesn't mean that he is. I understand. I'm going to give you some connections that at least somebody around him in 4 very important instances concealed the number 33 in dates. July is the 7th month of the year, and the 26th is the number of the day, and he named his revolution the 26th of July movement. 7 for the day plus 26 equals 33. Number 2. Okay, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Let's go here. Okay, now, once again, I guess I've only, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Here we go. Here's the second one. He named his brigade, as I said, the 26th of July movement after his guerrilla army invaded the Moncada barracks of the Cuban army in their small village called Oriente on July the 26th, 1953. July is 7 plus 2 plus 6 plus 1 plus 9 plus 5 plus 3 equals 33. His army rolled victoriously into Havana on January the 8th, 1959. January is the first month. 1 plus 8 plus 1 plus 9 plus 5 plus 9 is 33. And the last one is the day that he was named or sworn in as Prime Minister, February the 16th, 1959. February is the second month of the year, plus 1 plus 6 plus 1 plus 9 plus 5 plus 9 equals 33. So apparently he's using that symbol to show that he's a 33rd degree Mason. As a matter of interest and intrigue, it's nothing. It might be important, maybe not. I don't know. But the Macy's Christmas Parade has 33 giant balloons, and no more than that. 33. The Indianapolis 500-mile race, the 500-mile race for Memorial Day, has 33 cars in it and 11 rows of 3 apiece. Not 30 or 36, but 33. When they designed the 33-cent stamp, the United States government showed a flag, kind of about a third of the flag flowing, and the star is upside down, meaning it's 1 point down, and we'll cover that later. But they were showing that there's a connection between the star, the number 33, and the star with 1 point down, and we'll cover that later. When the American flag is folded, when they, as you remember, when they have a funeral for someone in the Navy, Army, or Armed Forces, they drape a flag over the coffin, and then it's folded by the attendants, the attendees, the honor guard, and then when they give it to the usually the wife or the remaining spouse or somebody, husband or could be a husband or whatever, family member, they hand it to them. It's been folded 13 times. The AT&T symbol, at least years ago, had 13 black stripes representing the circle, the sun, which is an interesting number, the number 13 again. Packard and Bell has 7, the one I've got in color shows a seven green stripes and 6 white stripes in between for a total of 13. The Jeep Commander has a grill with 7 black openings and 6 chrome lines for a total of 13. The Indian, the symbolic Indian apparently, for the National Museum of the American Indian has a drawing symbolically of a man, and he's got a head. The head is what it represents a round circle. It's not drawn in any form. It just looks like it represents a man, and he's got 13 rays sticking out of it. The Masons tell us in their one of their magazines way back in about 1960 that the number 13 has huge important symbology to the Masons. And as you know, if you go back to the dollar bill, it has 13 leaves, 13 bars and stripes, 13 arrows.
Hey, Ralph?
Yes?
Sorry, you just cut out again for about 30 seconds. You were just getting into talking about the number 13, and that you said, I think the last thing you said was that the American flag had 13...
okay, very good.
Stripes.
13 folds. You fold it 13 times, and it ends up in a triangle pyramid. The AT&T symbol has a total of 13 black stripes and then 12 white stripes in between, but the 13 would be the black representing 13 again, concealed in their symbol. The symbol that I have on my slide is of the Packard and Bell symbol. It's got 7 green stripes on the top and the bottom, and in between are, of course, 6 stripes in white for a total of 13. The Jeep Commander, at least the one I have was a 2007 in my DVD I made years ago, has a grill, 7 black openings, and 6 chrome lines for a total of 13. The National Museum of American Indian Museum has a stylized man. He's got 2 legs and, of course, 2 broken arms, so I guess his arms are behind him or something, and a round head for a round circle for his head, and then out of his head stick a total of 13 rays. The Masons, the French Revolution was created by the Masonic Lodge and the Illuminati way back in 1789, and they were the ones that created the thing called the metric system. And if you got a ruler, you can check this out. You can sometimes the ruler has inches and also millimeters. And if you compare 13 inches, it equals 33 millimeters. So there's a connection between the number 13 and 33 in the metric system. E pluribus unum, which is a slogan of America, means one out of many, has 13 letters in it. Annuit septus has 13 letters. There are 13 layers of stone on the pyramid in the back of the dollar bill. The words Novus Ordo Seclorum have 17 letters in the 3 words. If you count the number of Roman numerals, there's 9 of them, so you got 17 plus 9 equals 26, or 2 times 13. The American Eagle, the 2 words, has 13 letters in it. If you total the number of, if you get on the back of the dollar bill, you'll notice that the 3 letters are kind of up above some shadow figures. So if you count the number of divisions, there's 2 above images. The letter itself, O, has divided into 2. The N is divided into 1, 2, 3, and the E is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you add those together, and then the letters In God We Trust, and I think one more, you get a total of 33. So once again, the back of our dollar bill has other symbols. Besides, we carry this money. We don't know what these things mean. A very popular flag during the American Revolution was an appeal to God. Those words have 13 letters in them. There's a slogan said, "Don't tread on me," usually drawn on the back of a snake. There's 13 letters in those words. The 2 words evergreen tree, which on this flag is a tree like a Christmas tree, and there's a snake wrapped around its trunk. and the two words evergreen tree have 13 letters. I've got a flag here in front of me now. There's a snake like up from like 10 o'clock down to about 4 o'clock, and that snake has 32 divisions, plus the head would be 33, and then the 4 words, don't tread on me, would be 33. There's a serpent in called Quetzalcoatl in San Jose, California. It's probably 8 or 10 feet high. Its mouth is open. It's coiled, one on top of the other, and then the mouth is open. And then if you go find a pyramid, I think it's called the Sun Pyramid, maybe not. The Quetzalcoatl is shown as a lion with 13 rays behind him, and the mouth is open. There's a drawing of Prince Ko, apparently a Mayan prince. He's got a shield, and if you count the number of stars on round circles on the shield, there's 13. And behind him in the drawing is a snake with its mouth open. It's probably, if he's say 6 feet tall, the snake is probably 8 or 9 feet tall. There's a drawing of a Mayan Queen Mu consulting a soothsayer, and the snake is shown behind her as well to show that the snake was very important. The snake was speaking to through the soothsayer to tell the Mayan Queen Mu about some future event, I guess. Hieroglyphics constantly show snakes and circles for suns. The sun is represented quite often as Amun-Ra. The serpent has a name, and it's usually connected in some way to the pharaoh. King Tut, when they dug up his tomb, has a beautiful gold mask, and up above his forehead is a snake. It's the head and then the part of the body that curls back on his forehead. There's a snake, a head called Amun, which the sun god rests on the head of a ram, and there's 2 snakes holding the sun god into position. So suns and snakes have been worshipped all over the world. The snake temple in Vietnam, I saw in a book about Vietnam, I just pulled it out as a picture, shows it's a temple, I guess a Buddhist, and in front of it are 2 snakes about in the same relationship as the 2 on the front of Amun-Ra. Once again, the snake's mouth is open. The serpent post on the Scandinavian boat that they used with the oars and sails, that serpent head, his mouth is open. The lion god of the Indians, meaning East Indians, has 7 serpents behind it, each one crowned with a golden crown. So there's 7 plus the snake. There's a picture in my local newspaper of an Indian dancing with a skull on his head. It's a drawing like on a paper or maybe leather, but he's got a snake in his mouth, and he's got the snake head in his mouth as if it's talking. So I've been saying all along, since I discovered it, there's a 6,000-year-old worship of Satan all over the earth, and the serpent came to tell Adam and Eve word. The serpent spoke to Adam and Eve, and that's why all of these serpents I've mentioned so far, the heads are always open. So the serpent came to earth to speak to mankind. The Masons have a shrine order called the Order of Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl was a serpent god worshipped in Latin America. A book called A Deadly Deception, written by Jim Shaw and Tom McElhaney, says that when he went to his 33rd degree ritual inside, he said that the thing that was most noticeable is the way the walls are decorated with serpents. And then in my DVD you can see 2 of them. They're coiled behind the thrones that their leaders sit on, and the wall behind them has 2 of them, one on either side. It's probably, I would guess, 8 or 10 feet high, and the serpent there has a mouth that's open as well. And then up above the serpent. Inside the Masonic Lodge 33rd Degree Council in Washington, D.C. are swastikas. The swastika was the emblem used by Adolf Hitler of the Nazi Party. And there are two forms of it. One's good and one's evil. So it depends on which way it's rotating. And the rotating form that Hitler chose was called the evil side. And then inside the 33rd Degree Temple in color pictures you can get off the internet, you'll notice swastikas as well. And they're on either side of a sunburst with rays sticking out of it. And then on either side there's two columns with the swastika representing, like in a stripe, but it's a line that you follow and it shows swastikas. The inside the back wall, you can see this emblem on the inside. On the outside of the wall, behind four columns, and it looks like the inside one that I talked about. But this emblem of the sun god is enormous rays, and so that shows that there's connection between the sun god and the Masons and the snake. The word Samuel B. Morse, F.B. Morse, invented the Morse code in 1842. If you take the word Lucifer and spell it out, Lucifer, and then count the number of dots and dashes, there are 15 dots, and every dash is equal to three dashes, dots rather. There's your dot, means a dot. But when you hit the dash, you hold your thumb or your finger for 3 repetitions, which means the essence, as long as it would take you to 3 dashes. So if you count the number of dots in the word Lucifer, there are 15 dots and 6 dashes of 3 dashes apiece for a total of 18. 15 and 18 would total 33. One of the reasons our founding fathers picked July the 4th to have our Independence Day is July the 4th those 3 words have 13 letters in them. The year 1776 has a date in it as well. The last 2 numbers, of course, would total 7 and 6 would be 13. The founding fathers waited 13 years after they declared their independence to create our first government in 1789. So once again, 1776 plus 13 would be 1789 when we formed our first government. General Washington, a Mason, had 12 generals around him for a total of 13. 13 people worked on the design of the Great Seal. The first United States Navy had 13 men controlling 13 ships in the Navy. The Confederate flag, the red, white, blue one with the X kind of squashed down because it's a rectangle, has 13 stars in it. Now, if the star represents a state, as it does on the American flag, that should mean there were 13 stars in the Confederacy, but there were only 11. Oh, they were waiting for 2 more. No, 11 states started the war and 11 states finished it. The flag was not adopted officially until about 1863, about midterm in the war. War started in 1861 and ended in 1865. So they weren't waiting for 2 more states to join them. It was just the number 13 concealed inside their flag. The United Nations, those 2 words have 13 letters in them. George Washington, our first president, hired a man called Pierre Charles L'Enfant, who was a Mason, who laid out the city of Washington, D.C., which is a 10 miles square, 10 miles on a side of the layout of the city blocks. And there are Masonic symbols like the square and the compass built into it over and over again. When George Washington laid the cornerstone for the White House, or maybe it was the Capitol, I don't think that's the slide, it just says George Washington. But anyway, they laid it with a bunch of Masons. Washington was wearing his Masonic apron, and Masons were wearing their aprons as well. Oh yeah, if you multiply 13 times 13, you get 169. If you take 1776 minus 169, you get 1607, the year that the Pilgrims came to the United States. So it was another 13 times 13, symbolically concealing 13 times 13 for 169. If you take 1776 plus 169, you get the year 1945, when President Harry Truman, President of the United States, dropped 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Harry Truman, when he dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, was a 32nd degree Mason, later elevated to a 33rd. The period between July the 4th, 1945, when we celebrate the July 4th of that year, and you move forward 33 days, you get August the 6th, 1945, the very day the first bomb was dropped. So it's just an interesting connection. And later, as I said, he later became a 33rd degree Mason.
Right.
When you have the 5-pointed star traditionally drawn, as we do on our map, on our flag, it's 1 point up. If you turn it over, you get 1 point down, 2 points up. That star represents the star of the Eastern Star, the Masonic organization for women. And in a book entitled History of Freemasonry and Concordant Orders, written by 72, I think it was, Masons of high rank, they tell us that the star with 5 rays represents God. All that with the 1 point up, all that is pure, virtuous, and good. But when represented with 1 point down, it represents evil, all that is opposed to the good, pure, and virtuous. Yet the Eastern Star have a star with 1 point down. But this interesting that a witch by the name of Doreen Valiente, in her book entitled An ABC of Witchcraft Past and Present, says that the star with 1 point down represents the goat of Mendes, and she has a drawing of the goat of Mendes, also called Baphomet, with a head of with a goat's head with big horns, and the 5 points of the 2 points of the star that point up are the horns. The 2 points that point outward are the ears of the goat, and the chin pointed has a whisker, so it's actually the 5th star. But here's an interesting thought you can check out. Even you can do this while we're on the, and you can confirm this. But the elephant was decided to be the emblem of the Republican Party years ago, and it's been stylized into a little drawing, simply drawn of a like the letter U upside down, and then the letter J representing its trunk for the bottom part, and then there's a blue circle with 3 American stars on it. And that's been the symbol for I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
But in 1960, they reversed the 3 stars. Why? The 3 stars represent Satan or the goat of Mendes. And now the Republican Party has 3 stars with 1 point down. Why? I don't know. I can't find an explanation. But now you'll see the Republican logo has 3 points down, and in the book by Doreen Valiente, it represents the goat of Mendes or Satan, the devil. So someone could explain that to me, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, hey, when you were talking about Washington, D.C., you were talking a little bit about the layout of the geography of it, the way that they mapped it out. It's really interesting. I'm sure you know all this, but have you ever heard of David Flynn?
Flynn?
Yeah, David Flynn.
No.
He was a researcher. He did a lot of stuff with like the sacred geometry stuff. He was a Christian. He was a believer. He died a few years ago, but he wrote some really crazy books. But in his one of his spiels that I had, one of his lectures, he talks about where the District of Columbia, it's in that 10 square radius, diamond shape if you look at the map. And so you have Virginia and then Maryland on each side. So it's the Virgin Mary.
Oh, I see. I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, the square and the compass and the five-pointed star with 1 point down. In fact, I glossed over that. But if you find get a map east and west with north course pointing up, and can find the White House, right above it is a five-pointed star with 1 point down, drawn in the streets. So, and then secondly, the Masons built their 33rd degree temple exactly 13 blocks north of the White House, right above the star with 1 point down. I glossed over that a little too quickly. Okay, now let's continue. I'm going to give you my theory of what the number 13 means, and this is only a theory. I've never read this. It's just me with a guess. 6 is the number of man, according to the Bible, and 7 is the number of completion. So 6 plus 7 would be 13, or completed man. That's my interpretation of why they believe 13. So one of the reasons why they believe the number is significant. As you know, we in the theory, the fraudulent theory, I'll qualify that by saying it's fraudulent, but in there we have a thing called evolution. Evolution calls us Homo sapiens, but there's a group that's evolved higher than Homo sapiens called Homo noeticus. And Homo noeticus was started by Edgar Mitchell, a 32nd degree Mason, and I guess he's trying to convince people to join him with intelligence and wisdom. Now, once again, going back to the skeleton of 32 vertebrae, the skull is where the brain is, and Albert Pike wrote, "It is reason in which we must believe." So the reason part, where we can figure out the truth of the universe, is inside the skull, and so now you can become illuminated by seeking elevated to the Homo noeticus class. Pope Gregory the 13th in 1582 changed the calendar and said that the original calendar, people count days to determine when the sun is on its zenith and equinox and what's the other one, but they do that to determine when to plant, when to harvest, etc. So he decided that because we were on a 360-day cycle, and we changed to 365, the calendar was 11 days behind schedule. So on some day in October of 1582, June the 20th, he did it in 1582, so June the 23rd would move forward to become July the 24th. And on June the 23rd, it's a Babylonian festival where the people who believed in Babylon and the Baal, the sun god, they would light fires on the ground. And on July the 4th, a concealed holiday for the worship of Baal, we light fires in the sky called fireworks. So I'm sure, once again, July the 4th has 13 letters. So I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Of course, nowadays, baseball games, you go to the stadium, they fire off. But originally, the only time fireworks were ever fired off was on July the 4th. So the Founding Fathers concealed a holiday to the sun god on July the 4th. I think that's enough of that. Let's see if I got anything else to talk about.
Hey, Ralph, are you a music fan?
Music?
Yeah, you like music?
Not really. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, because I mean, that records are played at the speed of 33 1/3 RPM.
Yes, that's correct. I often wondered about that. I'm sure at the time we never, at the time it didn't mean anything, but now maybe it does have something to do with that. I don't know. Okay, I next want to get into a thing called the lion's paw, and I want to urge all of you. I'm going to try to describe it so that you can do it as well. But I want you to know this is a sign when you complete it that you have been initiated into the ancient mystery religion of Lucifer worship. So bear with me. I'm going to give you the sign, and if you want to do it, you can see what it looks like by doing it yourself. But I want you to just in your own mind say, I'm not doing this to show that I'm a Luciferian. I'm doing it to see what it looks like. and how you make the sign. But what you do is you stretch your arm out horizontally, and then open up all 5 fingers with your thumb on the side touching the first finger, what they call the index finger. And then I want you to curl the first knuckle underneath so that when you look down your wrist, you see the wrist bones, the 4 knuckles, and then the first 4 bones, meaning your fingers, and the thumb will be tucked into the area where you've made a little cup. So now you look down your arm and you see the wrist bones, then the 4 knuckles, and then the stubby end, the first 4 joints of your fingers, and then the rest is curled out and you can't see it. Then I want you to take that and place it over your heart and pull your elbow in. Now, if you just did that, tell Lucifer, say that you didn't do that to show you've been initiated, but you wanted to know how to do it. And now we're going to look for that symbol in the past, and wait till you see where it's been shown before. Here's the quote. I found it. Forgive me. Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree Mason. Quote, "Symbolism fulfilled the dual office of concealing the sacred truths from the uninitiated," meaning us dummies, "and revealing them to those qualified to understand the symbols." That's from his book entitled Secret Teachings of All Ages, on page V, as in Victor, meaning Roman numeral 5. Now we're going to talk about the lion's paw. It's a symbol at least 4,000 to 5,000 years old.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, as I typed it in and I was going through that with you, Time Magazine has an issue with
Stop! Don't give it away.
All right.
I'm going to talk about that. Please.
All right. Well, all right. Go ahead.
Keep it in front of you to confirm what I'm saying. Hold it, please. I know about that, and that's one of the ones that got me started in this whole thing. Just hold it for a while, please. Because I'm going to talk about that and put it in context.
Don't worry. Hey, Ralph, real quick. I can edit everything out. You know what I mean? Like, so it's nothing's going to be a spoiler. You know what I mean?
Okay, well, just hold it. Anyway, let's talk about these. Now, I'm going to go back as far back as I can go. Hieroglyphics show the lion represented eternal life. The first drawing I have on my little booklet called The Lion's Paw shows in hieroglyphic form a lion stretched out as a low table, probably, maybe 2 feet off the ground, and there's someone dead laying on the table, but the lion's head is like the pillow for his head, and then his feet go down, and the tail curves up over his feet, so he's laying flat, and the lion represents eternal life. The second one I have shows a dead somebody on the ground with an X across his chest, which the cartoonist used as a way of indicating the man's dead. And the lion is kneeling beside the dead corpse with his hand on the wrist of the left hand of the man, holding a symbol called the Ankh, A-N-K-H, and it's a symbol of eternal life. In Manly P. Hall's book entitled The Secret Teachings, I think it is, he shows a picture of a man laying in a casket with the lid off. He's alive, obviously. He's being pulled up out of the grave, the casket, by a man with a lion's head on, and the man is holding an ankh in his left hand. So here's the lion showing the lion's paw to the initiate, the man. The first enemy represents eternal life, the lion. The first example of this I found was of a statue of Khufu, also called Cheops, the man who built the Great Pyramid, the biggest one of all with all the rooms in it. And he's, a little statue is probably 6 inches high. He's giving the first sign of the lion's paw over his left. His arm is open in front of him, making the lion's paw over his heart. In the newspaper, my Arizona Daily Star, there was a picture of the high priest Cal, K-A-L, in a statue form. He's giving the same sign over his heart, and he helped the 3 pharaohs build the 3 great pyramids, and he was the high priest to, of course, Cheops. The lion's paw was being given by Napoleon. Whenever you see a drawing of Napoleon, generally you'll find he's got the lion's paw, but it's concealed inside his coat. And no one ever explained, like he's got some sort of stomach problem. He's got his hand inside his coat, but it's always representing that, and that's the lion's paw, but it's concealed. And we'll see that again in other pictures. Annie Besant, who was a Luciferian, is the only woman I found so far giving the sign. She was the president of the Theosophist Society, founded by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, a believer in Lucifer, Satan, the devil, and she was as well. And she's giving the sign. Hers is on the outside of her coat. A book called Freemasonry Exposed on page 107 shows the sign in drawing form. It's called the Sign of a Fellow Craft, and it's the lion's paw, so it's apparently a sign given in the Masonic ceremonies. The initiates given that sign as a way to identify himself to others as a Mason. The man who built the Statue of Liberty, Auguste Bertholdi, a member of the Masons, I found a picture of him giving the lion's paw once again inside his coat. Go ahead. You got something to say?
No, I was just the Statue of Liberty. I knew about that. I was just reiterating, that he was a Mason.
Okay. There's a picture of Lieutenant Elisha Hunt Rhodes in a book called Freemasons at Gettysburg, and he was a apparently lieutenant. He's standing in front of the camera with his arm covered inside. He's got his arm inside the like Napoleon, giving the same sign. He was a worshipful master of a lodge in Rhode Island, but in the Civil War he was a lieutenant. Here's a picture of Confederate Captain Henry Wirz, W-I-R-Z, commander of the notorious Andersonville Civil War prison, where 12,000 prisoners died while under his watch. In 1864, he was charged with war crimes against humanity, found guilty, and sentenced to hang in 1865. He's giving the lion's paw. Karl Marx, the father of communism, who also became a Luciferian when he went to college. He joined a satanic cult and learned about Lucifer, Satan, the devil from a witch named, I can't remember. Anyway, he's giving the sign, but his sign is once again inside his coat. And probably the most famous picture of him is, it's a portrait sitting in a chair, but there he's giving the sign in his coat. Nikolai Lenin, the brutal communist dictator of Russia, is in a photograph giving the very same sign. His hand is inside his coat. Lenin was responsible for the murder of he and Stalin together, the murder of at least 40 million innocent Russians during the Russian Revolution. Joseph Stalin, the man who replaced Lenin and quite likely poisoned Lenin, but he was also, there's a photograph of him giving the same sign on the internet, and which means he's been born again to the ancient mystery religion of Lucifer worship. John Wilkes Booth, the man who shot Abraham Lincoln, was a Mason. He's giving the sign in several photographs of him with his hand also inside his coat. I've also got one of him doing it with a picture of him with his hand outside the coat. So both pictures show that he was an illuminated Mason, an initiate of the ancient mystery religion. There's a picture of Jesse James and Frank James on the cover of a book entitled Jesse and Frank James. Frank James is giving the traditional sign that he's a member of the Masons, meaning the lion's paw, on his outside of his coat, and standing beside him is Jesse, but Jesse's got his hand on the right lapel, which is indicating that he's a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle. And we'll talk about them maybe if we get time a little later. So there's a difference between the two signs, one indicating that Frank James was a Mason, Jesse was not, but later Jesse James became a 33rd degree Mason. General William Tecumseh Sherman, who led the march, the known March to the Sea, Scorched Earth, on the May issue of 1987 New Age magazine shows that he's was never a Mason, but he's giving the sign of the lion's paw, which means he was at least an initiate of the ancient mystery religion. Alan Pinkerton, the man who chased Jesse James around and Frank for 16 years but never captured them, strangely enough, working for the railroads, is giving a sign. There's pictures of him with Abraham Lincoln and a general. The general and Pinkerton are both giving the same sign. Both of them have their hand concealed inside their coat. Lincoln is standing there almost as if he's oblivious to these two men. There's two pictures of it taken a little bit differently, that the cameraman moved or one of them moved, but they're still doing the same thing, and Lincoln is oblivious to it. So you can draw your own inferences. But anyway, they're both, Pinkerton was at least a Mason. Bloody Bill Anderson, the man who was lieutenant to Quantrill of the Quantrill's Raiders, is giving a sign and a photograph of him, of the Knights of the Golden Circle. There's no information that he was a Mason, but you can see once again he's giving the sign, and Jesse James was one of the soldiers fighting alongside Bloody Bill Anderson for Quantrill's Raiders. Stanton P. Chase, the Secretary of the Treasury and President Lincoln's Civil War cabinet, is giving the sign with his hand inside his coat as well. He's the one that the Chase Manhattan Bank is named after. So apparently there's some connection between him and Lion's Paw and the Chase Manhattan Bank. Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, is giving this satanic symbol of the clenched fist, or the Lion's Paw, on the back cover of one of his books entitled Satan Speaks. He's giving the Lion's Paw. Now, you can don't say a word yet, but I'm going to talk about the February 17th, 1986 cover of Time magazine. And on that cover, by the way, these last two are not very pleasant, and I'm aware of that, because this is very, very disturbing, this picture. But as you just pointed out, it's all over the internet, and in 1986 or so, I found this picture and made it public, and have been doing everything I can to promote it. And I'll talk about how I know what it means in a minute. But the picture shows Pat Robertson, the Christian televangelist, on the cover of Time magazine on February the 17th, 1986, giving the Lion's Paw outside his coat.
Yep.
Now, so the question is, why would he do that? Let's say that he didn't know what it meant. Let's just be fair to him. I don't know what it means. How many portraits? I've been looking for this portrait for 30 years probably. I found maybe 25 pictures of it. But Pat Robertson's doing it. So the photographer says, listen, Pat, here's a little novelty. Let's have you put your hand over your heart, curl your fingers in, and I'll show you how to do it. And you do that, and we'll take a picture of you. How many men would say, wait a minute, what am I going to do that for? I don't even know what that means. So I'll just stand here like that. But notice the little grin. You can confirm this. Look at the little sheepish grin on his face, as if I know something you don't know. Now that's body language, or it could be Pat Robertson's smile. But it's very disturbing to see Pat Robertson giving the sign that he's been born again to Lucifer, Satan, the devil, that's at least 5,000 years old. Now let me finish. There's a radio evangelist named... oh gosh, I can't think of his name. I don't have it in my DVD. It's something separate. But, I'm sorry, David Weber. I have it in my notes. Forgive me. Reverend David Weber used to run Southwest Radio Church for years. I used to listen to it like 15 minutes a day, whenever I was able to get it during the day. And he ran this thing for years. And I had a chance to meet him, because I was a guest on his program several times. And I asked him about this picture. And he said he took this picture of Time magazine with him because he was a member of a Christian television and radio evangelist association who met together to discuss common problems. So he went with this thing, according to him, a Christian minister, to meet Pat, and I presume they knew each other, maybe even casually. So he said, Pat, what were you doing on the cover of magazine, the Time magazine, giving this sign? And according to David Weber, a fundamentalist Christian pastor, he said that Pat Robertson said he fell off his horse and injured his elbow. Now, I talked to my doctor, without naming names. I said, "Doctor, if I fell off my horse and injured my elbow, what would you do?" He said, "Well, the first thing is I'd find out what it was, and if it was an injury elbow, I'd get you a sling and made out of cloth, and you would hold it there, or maybe now even in a cast to hold the bones in place. But you don't put your hand up like that if you got an injured elbow. You don't get it like that because you're putting strain on the elbow, and every time you bump it or move it, even breathing, it moves the elbow. So that doesn't make sense. But that was the official, according to David Weber, the official explanation of Pat Robertson. Now this one, I'm going to make it third, because I had it. I said the first two. This is one I just found. So let's talk about the second one of the examples of a man giving the sign. He's born again to Lucifer, Satan, the devil, and that's President George Washington. Our President George Washington, the founder of America, is giving the lion's paw inside his coat in a portrait. Now I have to admit, it's a portrait, Ralph. Come on, get real. But I'm going to point out something. It's not a picture, because there were no cameras in 1789. He died, I think, shortly after 1798 or something. So if this was a portrait of him giving it, and he actually stood there, then he knew what he was doing. If the portrait was commissioned after, and someone painted it that way, I'm going to contend that was by design, because this is on the cover of a book. I'm sorry, it was found in a book called George Washington, The Man and the Mason, by Charles Callahan, published in 1913. The book was authorized by the auspices of the Memorial Temple Committees of the George Washington Masonic National Memorial Association. So this is an official portrait of George Washington. So let's say that he didn't give the sign. Why would the Masons have a portrait painted of him giving the very same sign? Why? Please, Mason, explain that to me. Why would our president, knowingly, I'll admit that, we can't confirm he knew what he was doing, but the Masons are saying he knew what he was doing because it's in their book, which is the book they published to commemorate this national memorial sign. It's got a huge big temple in Washington, D.C., of him, and it apparently got his library and memorials wherever it is. In fact, I think that's where the Bible that many of our presidents have been sworn in on comes from. Now, the last one is brand new. I just found it maybe less than a year ago. And I want to be fair. This is only a half sign, but it's at least to question it, because Billy Graham is giving the same sign on the cover of a book entitled The Challenge. It's a picture, not a drawing. So that means that at least at Billy Graham, it's a profile, and he's got his hand up, but I have to admit, his first finger is somewhat curled. It's not in the traditional form, so it might mean nothing, but it could also mean something special about his finger, or maybe his finger couldn't bend that way. I don't know, but at least we've got to at least keep it in the back of our mind, because it's a very strange picture for a man who's a Christian evangelist giving a sign that he's been born again, possibly being born again to Satan, Lucifer, the devil. And so I want those last three. It's very frightening to think about Christian ministers get involved with this thing. Now, there's one more thing I want to mention. I just found this less than a month ago. The Hebrew alphabet, every letter represents a number. 1,
Yep.
2, 3. Okay. Now, the sixth letter is the Hebrew letter Vav. I pronounce it Vav. I've seen it also pronounced H-A-W, but the common one is Vav, V-A-U or V-A-W, Vav. Now, the letter Va it looks like a spike, a railroad spike. It's a letter L, but turned upside down with the L part facing to the left, let's say. So it looks like a nail drawn where the further on down you go, it's pointed. And you go up and it's a little bit wider, and then it makes a curve with half of the nail cap on it off to the left. That's the letter VA. So 3 VAs would be 6, 6, 6. There's a drink out. I'm not going to identify it, but look for it. It's an energy drink, and I'm not going to name it because I don't want to get them in trouble or anyone else. But strangely enough, on the metal aluminum can are 3 VAs side by side. What's that got to do? Does that mean it's somehow connected to Lucifer? Yes, maybe, maybe not. But it's a very strange symbol. I've never seen it before.
Hey, you mentioned the whole Time magazine thing. I actually found another recent Time magazine. I'm trying to find, I can't see the date quite on this one, but it seems more recent. It's got Rand Paul on it giving the lion's paw.
Rand, that's the son?
The son of Ron Paul, yeah.
Would you please send me an email or a message or somewhere to get that to me? I want to see that.
Yeah, I'll email it to you right now.
Okay. You got my email. Thank you very much for that. I was not familiar with that. Once again, like going back to Pat Robertson, Pat admitted that the picture was real. Understand, David Weber confronted him with it in his hand, and Pat admitted that it was real. It wasn't photoshopped. Now, once again with Rand Paul, I'm going to at least hold until we get some confirmation somehow that he knowingly did that, because it could very well be photoshopped as a way of discrediting. I don't know, but I'm at least hold it, but I want to see it. Now, okay, I hear I hear that typing away there. Okay, I'm going to close the folder on the lion's paw. Let's see what else we got. Okay, here's something interesting. I want you to take just a straight line, make it about 12, 13 inches long, and then separate it into 13 individual segments, meaning 1, 2, 3, etc., through 13. So there's 12 lines, dividing it into 13 equals. And then I want you to fold it 4 segments up until they form a triangle. So the base is 5 segments. Each arm is 4 segments for a total of 13. Now, when you measure the degree, let's say on the right-hand side, where the 5 meets the 4 on the right-hand side on the bottom, that measures a degree called 51 degrees 25 minutes. Now, the actual measurements of the Great Pyramid of Giza is 51 degrees and 19 minutes. So it's very close. But those who measured the second one, say that we don't know for sure because the facing stones have been removed. So we don't have that. We're measuring it from the first block. So maybe on the facing stones, the ones at the bottom were wider than they were at the top. No one knows because except I think with a few instances, maybe 10 or 15 rows, they've been pulled off by Egyptians who were building Cairo way back centuries ago. So it's an interesting connection. 13 has got something to do with the Great Pyramid of Giza, the one with the rooms in it. There are 3 rooms in it. There's a underground chamber. It's underneath the ground level, what they call the Queen's Chamber and the King's Chamber. And by the way, that pyramid was never built as a tomb. When some sheik or somebody decided there was treasure in there, he took some of his followers with him, and they started heating up the stones with fire, and then they'd throw cold water on it. It would crack the stones, and they actually tunneled their way into where they met the chambers and went up to the second and third layers, and they found according to them, they found no treasures, no tomb, no sarcophagus, no nothing. So that it was always meant to be a house. And notice on the back of our dollar bill, where the Latin phrase is annuit Coeptus or Septus Novus Ordo Seclorum. It means announcing the birth of the New World Order. The capstone is the pyramid with the eye in it is not on the pyramid, it's above it. So when that eye lands on the pyramid, the New World Order, the Novus Ordo Seclorum, our nation was committed to, will be intact because the pyramid's going to be the house for Lucifer, Satan, the devil. And in fact, in many of the books you read on the pyramid, they admit that it's a house, not a temple. Now, these are just sheets of paper that I've got to insert later on into the old documentaries I've made, the DVDs. I find things to put it in the folder, and I just pulled them out at random. I just noticed we just passed through Pearl Harbor, and I'm from Arizona, of course, and the SS Arizona was sunk, and it in the harbor, and they never moved it. In fact, they removed the upper structure, but the base is still there, entombing something like 1,100 sailors. So they built on top of it a white place to commemorate it, and people can sit and listen to the man. And also at the end of it, there's every name of the sailors who are inside, entombed, never pulled out, are listed. But when you see the little thing above the water, and by the way, if you want to check this, go ahead, find a picture of it, confirm this, that there are 7 white columns and 6, I'll call them windows open between, for 7 plus 6 is 13, just like on the Jeep Wagoneer. So 7 plus 6 on our Pearl Harbor monument. Okay, let's go. I've talked about that, the United Nations, and okay. Oh yeah, this is interesting. Walt Disney is of course, the great cartoonist who made Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. Yep. But this is just an interesting coincidence, I'm sure. His major character is called Mickey Mouse. So when you write it down in not write it, but what do they call it? Regular letters, M, the letter M, and then I, C, K, Y, M, etc. You count that there's 6 plus 5 or 11 letters. So then if you write underneath that, you write the 2 words master underneath the word Mickey and Mason under the word mouse. You'll find that Master Mason also have 11 letters. But notice they also have 2 M's in each name. Walt Disney was a Mason. Now, if you turn the 2 letters M, you pull them out and put them side by side, and then turn the sheet to the right, the 2 M's look like the numbers 3.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Yep.
So let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, one more thing. Jason is a very, I won't say very common, but many people are called Jason for their name. Jason. I've discovered that there's there's something in April and again in September. I don't know what it's called, the equinox or whatever it is. So yeah. April, then it's in May, and then in October, May and October. So if you connect the letters between there, it's July, August, September, October, November. Jason. So the name Jason is named after the distance between these 2 sun holidays. It's called the equinox, or whatever it is, one of these holidays when the sun makes some sort of movement. So I thought that was just interesting. There are 13 witches in a coven, 13 steps on a gallows. I got a picture of the gallows in Tombstone. It's in a walled area beside the courthouse, and I counted the steps of the gallows. There's 13. When you see a rope that they use to hang you, it's a loop, and then it's wrapped around above. There's 13 spirals. So 13 steps on the gallows and 13, I'll call them coils, on the rope. The 13th card of a tarot deck represents death. Okay. Okay, these are, that's enough. I got that one already covered. Let's see. Let's go back to the 33rd degree northern latitude. It was under the 33rd degree northern latitude that the Masons built their first 33rd degree council. And the council was where they built their first temple. So in 1801, they built it underneath the 33rd degree northern latitude. Latitudes are circles like the equator. And there's 90 of them going north, so there's 90 degrees northern latitudes and 90 degrees southern latitudes. But the one that goes north is very significant, and we'll talk about that as we go across the United States and also the globe itself. So Charleston, South Carolina is underneath the 33rd degree latitude, northern latitude, where the Masons started their first 33rd degree council. We've already talked about the number 13 being important to the Masons, and now we're going to talk about the first battle of the Civil War was in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. Now what that means, I don't know, but it's interesting that it was in that particular port. They could have used any other fort, but they particularly chose that particular one. You can draw whatever references you want from that. Now, if you go across the United States with that, you run into some very interesting things. It goes right over the city of Hope, Arkansas. Now, Hope is where Bill Clinton was born. Now, Bill Clinton was desirous of getting into politics, and he lived in Arkansas. And one of the men who got him into politics was the senator named William Fulbright from Arkansas. And Fulbright, I believe, encouraged him to get into politics, and that he could, if he did so, he could become president. And he urged him to go to Georgetown University, where he would be taught by Dr. Kell Quigley. And Dr. Quigley wrote a book called Tragedy and Hope that we know Bill Clinton read. And then when Clinton got out of Georgetown, he went to Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship. And then when he got back and came to the United States years later, he would join the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, just curiously enough, Senator Fulbright was a Rhodes Scholar and also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. So now I don't know this, but let's just say that Billy Clinton learned about the importance of the 33rd degree, and he said, my gosh, I was born underneath that. I could become president of the United States. I don't know that, but it's sure an interesting coincidence. Phoenix, Arizona. Oh, sorry, wait. The site of the first atomic bomb blast is in the White Sands in New Mexico, underneath the 33rd degree northern latitude. And when you go there, you'll see, in fact, you can check it on the internet, you'll see there's a stone obelisk built there. It's not very tall, apparently, but that's where they have the sign showing that somehow the Masons or the Masonic Masons were somehow involved in the first atomic bomb. They built an obelisk. They didn't build a little monument or a table. It's an obelisk. Now, you continue over the city of Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona is the capital of my state of Arizona, and it didn't used to be the capital, but the previous two capitals were not underneath the 33rd, so they picked Phoenix and named it named it Phoenix after the phoenix bird that arises from the ashes and starts a new civilization, a new life. So Phoenix, my state capital. Now the state flag of Arizona is of course a rectangle divided in half, and the bottom half is a beautiful royal blue, and above it is a semicircle orange thing with 13 rays sticking out of it. So you could say, wait a minute, that sounds like it's a 13 of the Masons, yes? So it's underneath the 33rd degree, and our state capital is Phoenix, named after the phoenix bird, also important to the Masons. Now, Senator Barry Goldwater was a 33rd degree Mason. Congressman John Rhodes, who was the minority leader, at one time majority leader of the House, was a 32nd or 33rd degree Mason. Carl Hayden, our first senator, was a 33rd degree Mason. So it seems to help if you want to get into politics in Arizona, you join the Masons. Right. Now you extend it over into California, and it runs right over Anaheim, California, where Disneyland is. So now that could be a coincidence because Disney World is not underneath the 33rd degree in Florida. It's in Orlando, Florida. So you could argue, well, that's just a coincidence. And of course, he knew about Hollywood being the home of the movies, and he needed a large piece of land, so he found it in orange groves, or cheap, not full of houses and buildings. So maybe he did, maybe not by coincidence. But now we continue. There's 2 more to go. If you continue it on over the town, the city known as Hiroshima, and north of it, I think it is Nagasaki, both of those 2 cities are underneath the 33rd degree northern latitude, and that's where Harry Truman decided to drop the 2 atomic bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But the most important significance of the whole thing is that if you continue it on, it goes right through Babylon.
Wow.
Iraq or Iran, wherever it is. Babylon, the ancient mystery religion talked about. So and Albert Pike in his writing says that we connect Masonry to the ancient mystery religion. Well, I guess they do. And by the way, if you do a search of for cities, there's a website where you can check these things, these grids. It gives you the longitude and latitude. If you type in Hope and then type that in, maybe with a couple other Hope, like Hopedale, Massachusetts, and Hopeful Ark, Alabama, etc., you'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cities that are all with the first 4 words, first letters Hope, like Hope Hull, Alabama under the 33rd, Hopedale under the 33rd, Hopeful under the 33rd, Hopeville under the 33rd, Hopewell under the 33rd, Hopewell again in Georgia, 33 degrees, Hopewell, Texas, Hopewell, Louisiana. All of those are, but the significant part of this whole thing is the Dallas, Texas connection. Now this is going to offend some people, but I'm sorry, it's underneath the 33rd. You can verify this yourself. It's very easy to do. John Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, underneath the 33rd degree northern latitude. Now, it's even more to it than that. Now, if you can picture in your mind a map of Dallas and the Dealey Plaza, it's shaped somewhat like a pyramid that's flat on the top. In other words, the road that John Kennedy was on was called Main Street, or let's call it Main Street, which runs approximately east and west, and he's going west. And as he got to a street, he turned to the right, and then in front of the School Book Depository, turned to the left and ran down an angled street underneath the overpass, which cut the pyramid off flat at the top. So if you look down on it, it looks like a pyramid, but kind of squashed down because the 2 sides are not a straight line. They're kind of curved. There's a little bit of a curve involved. But you could argue. But anyway, John Kennedy's car drove within about 15 feet of an obelisk, like the obelisk in George Washington Square. The Washington Monument is an obelisk. This one has 12 stones on it, plus a base, plus the flame up above it for the 13th degree. And on the plaque, it says this is to commemorate the site, meaning the location, of the first fraternal lodge in Texas. Now, all of the men that were at the Battle of the Alamo, or at least I'll say this, I'm going to say all because there might be 1 or 2, but some people say all, some say a high majority of all the men fighting at the Alamo were Masons, like Austin and Houston and Davy Crockett and a couple others that, cities are named after. Davy Crockett was a Mason from Tennessee, and so was Houston and Austin, etc. But now let's finish. So there's if you went straight ahead, you'd go through the pyramid, through underneath the underpass. But if you turn left on that first, we turn to the right to go to the School Book Depository. But if you turn left, there's a huge statue of George Bannerman Dealey after whom the Dealey Plaza is named. And George Bannerman Dealey, the statue must be 8 or 10 feet tall, huge big thing, on a huge podium, if you will, like the base underneath the Statue of Liberty. And George Bannerman Dealey was a 33rd degree Mason. So obviously it's the site of the first Masonic Lodge in Texas. Now, let's take the date of John Kennedy's assassination. You'll notice that in some of those things I gave you, you take the number of the month plus the number of days. So November the 22nd, November's the 11th month, plus 22 equals what? 33.
Right.
He was supposed to be there, according to the schedule, at high noon, going through the Dealey Plaza at noon. They knew that what time his plane would land. They knew how long it would take to get there. But fortunately or unfortunately, Kennedy, as he drove through on the way to the school book depository, people would rush out the street or they'd run alongside and they had to slow down. So they got there about 11:30. But if they got there at noon, that's when the sun is at its most powerful influence. So I'm saying that there's reason to believe somehow that some Masons were directly involved in the assassination of John Kennedy. Now, to further complicate problems, once again, this is a matter of public record. I'm not revealing anything that no one can verify. Earl Warren, who was named to look into the Kennedy assassination, was a 33rd degree Mason. He appointed 7 men to be on, or maybe 6 others, for a total of 7, and he named 6 others, 2 of which were Masons. Senator Richard Russell was a 32nd degree Mason, and Gerald Ford was also another 32nd degree Mason, and Gerald Ford later became, of course, president, and also was moved up to the 33rd. And then J. Edgar Hoover was a 33rd degree Mason, so he would make sure that the Masons were not even discussed in the assassination of the president. So I'm contending that some Masons were directly involved in the assassination of John Kennedy, and then in the cover-up of. So I'm contending that the Masons were given the opportunity, the 33rd degree council, to pick the day, the time, and the location for the assassination of President John Kennedy. When I revealed this in 1990 in the city of Las Vegas in a 4-hour speech, about 6-hour seminar speech, people sat there and stunned. They had never heard this or thought of this before, and now there's all sorts of people writing about it, and I'm grateful. Because I'm not the only one saying this. It's now become public, and it was public even then. It's just a matter of doing some research, and I found it. So there's reason to be concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I got some other things here. I'm sorry. I'm going to just skip. Oh, the letters CIA in our alphabet. C is the 3rd letter. I is the 9th letter, and A is the 1st letter, so 3 plus 9 plus 1 equals 13 for the CIA. I've got a picture of an asylum in London, England, a beautiful, it's apparently vacant, but it's the most Gothic building I've ever seen, and there are steps leading up to it. You're on the dirt level, and you climb up 17 steps, walk across the platform, and then climb up 16 more for a total of 33. 16 and 17 equals 33. Which I'm trying to point out to you, all you got to do is look for this stuff and you find it. Mm-hmm. Now, I went to the University of Arizona. And the University of Arizona was a land grant college, meaning that the state approved it, and the land was given to it in 1880 or something when we weren't even a state. So it was a land grant college. Now the building has the old main building that was built. The first, it's still there, by the way. It's a beautiful structure, and you can verify this on any picture. Check in, type in the University of Arizona Old Main, and you'll see this building. And there are steps leading up to the 2nd floor. You can walk in on the 1st floor, but if you want to get to the 2nd floor outside the building, they didn't have elevators when this building was built. So you walk up steps. There's 16 in the front and 16 in the back. And when you get to the 30, in essence, the 16th floor, there's this obelisk. It's a different it's not quite a true obelisk because it's not sloped like an obelisk, but there's a triangle on top, and on top of the obelisk is a little kind of M-shaped device. It's got apparently to allow egress in and out of the air, maybe in the attic or something. But if you take that as an M, there's an M on the other side as well. So M again for Master Mason, or 33. So once again, another connection. Then there's a building that's just built. It houses the Department of the Air College, and it's a relatively new building. When I went to the university, this building was not there, so I never saw it. But when I walked there to go visit a professor, about a year or two ago, I had to climb a flight of stairs. And once again, there are 33 concrete steps leading up to the second floor of this building, and that's the way you get into the building. Then there's elevators. But the first floor is on ground level. You climb up to go through, and then there's another layer up there. So it's only half of the building. The left-hand side, on the left-hand side of the building, you could see into the first floor, which is only maybe half a building. But there were 33 steps leading to the upper most part of the building. The statue of Satan, Baphomet, that they're using to place beside a Ten Commandments, I think, shows Baphomet sitting in a chair, a throne, and behind him is the star with one point down, connecting the two stars of the Baphomet star with the star on the Eastern Star, 1 point down, meaning the star of Lucifer, Satan, the devil. Let's see. Here's the Republican elephant again. Oh, the White House. The White House is 168 feet wide and 152 feet deep. Now, according to my calculator, 168 plus 152 is 320. 32 zeros. Is that a coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. I just wonder. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Okay. The Supreme Court building. When you get a picture of it on the internet. It's got 7 columns plus 6 spaces in between. 7 plus 6 equals 13. The baseball is expanding its this is 2009 in my sports page, Arizona Daily Star. July 2nd, 2009, sports page 2. Baseball is expanding the all-star rosters again. Each league will have 33 players. 33 players. Apparently they had 32 before for the July 14th game in St. Louis, with an extra pitcher added to bring the total to 13. 13 pitchers and 33 players. And I'm telling you, on the ruler, 13 is equal to 33. Now, it's just another coincidence, isn't it? Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be just a coincidence, Ralph. I mean, just freak coincidence.
Okay, the Pentagon building the construction started on September the 11th, 1941. September the 11th? What day was it hit by an airplane? What was there? Is that a coincidence? Surely it is. The first steel in the Pentagon, or the World Trade Center, first steel was installed in 1968. 1968 from 2001 is 33 years later.
Wow.
It was 33. Oh, another. See, notice what I'm doing. I'm using the newspapers to confirm there's something going on with the number 33. You start looking for it. It's everywhere around us.
Yeah. Hey, what? Real quick, you've been mentioning all these, like, the Supreme Court building and the White House, and you see these pillars, right? What do pillars symbolize?
Well, I can only tell you this. I'll give you the only way that I can know that. I don't know what the pillars mean except the numbers. 7 and 6 means 13, and that's the way they conceal it. Like on the next time you see a Jeep, count the number of chrome stripes and the number of black spots in between to let the air through. 13. The obelisks were placed side by side on sun temples, indicating what they call the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer. Now, when the sun moves on the horizon, in fact, we just passed one of these on December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. The sun, if you were to place a rock, stand in the same position, and place a rock on the horizon every day where it sets, the sun would appear to move. It's not moving. The Earth is rotating, but the sun moves back and forth on the horizon. When it gets to the one end and the other end, it's as far as the sun can go. It can't go any further. They call that the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer. Now, what that means, I don't know. You can have fun with that and use it yourself. But those are the two limits. Now, if you remember in the movie, what's it called? Indiana Jones. In one of the things, he had a piece like a magnifying glass, and he got into he fell down into a temple or something, and put the magnifying glass on a 6 foot tall spike or something, and then waited for the sun to come through the opening above his head. And when it did, it shone directly on the little model of the temple, which means, that can only happen probably one day out of a year, maybe twice a year, when the sun goes by it on the way south and back on the way north. So he knew that was important, that the little round symbol he had, which was a glass, I guess, like a magnifying glass, had some importance. And when he put it on some shaft that, as I remember, was in the room, I can't confirm that, but he put this up and he held it, and sure enough, the sun moved, and suddenly the ray of light went down on a little platform or something, a treasure, whatever it was. So there's some importance that people know that the original Egyptians used to build temples put obelisks on either side of the main door of the temple, so that once or twice a year the sun would shine directly through and reach the altar at the other end, or the eastern end or maybe the northern, or the western end. I think it was on the west, pointing to the east. I could be wrong, but in any event, it was at one end only. So it was done twice a year, and they could know that was the equinox or the day, whatever it was, of their sun worship. So that's the only explanation I have of. By the way, there's a Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. The other two, there's one. There was a temple of Heliopolis. I think the two obelisks were pulled down. One is in New York City, in not Times Square, Central Park, and the other one's in London. Now, what that means, I don't know. I can't figure that out. But that's where they're now standing. And then, of course, there's one in if you get an overhead view of the Rome, the Vatican, in the middle of it, it's two triangle sides separated by a round circle. So one, if you get in, the sides converge. The base is longer, then they converge, but they don't touch. But then there's a circle, and then on the other side of the circle, the lines go out again to the end of the thing where the Pope comes out and addresses the crowd. There's another obelisk there, and when you get a downward shot of it, it's right in the middle of a wheel with, I think, 32 spines or 12 spines or something. So 12 plus the circle would be 13, and there's the obelisk. Huh. Now, I've got pictures in my DVDs of scratch set. Yeah, I think I do have 3. I'll say at least 2 I'm confirmed of, where pictures were taken over the right shoulder of the Pope, who's in a little balcony speaking to hundreds of thousands of people in those 2 sections separated by the obelisk. And in each case, he's waving his arm, or his arm is up, and the picture's taken over him, and he's speaking to it almost like he's talking to the obelisk, which is right smack dab in the middle. So why that obelisk is there, I don't know, because it's a symbol of Lucifer, Satan, the devil. And there it is in the Vatican, in the center where the people congregate to greet their Pope. And when the Pope comes out, at least twice. Also, one more thought. Traditionally, let's see now, I think it's on the west side. I'm gonna forgive me. I'm gonna say the west side. But traditionally, the presidents of the United States were inaugurated on the east side. I might have that reversed, but let's just say, for the sake of arguments, on the west side. So they were traditionally to speak on the other side, where they could get a large crowd and they could stand there and watch the president being inaugurated. Ronald Reagan was the first president ever inaugurated on the other side. And once again, there's a picture taken, I show it in my DVD, it was in Life magazine, I think, of Ronald Reagan with the camera well above him. And Reagan in the picture is very small, maybe, let's say the picture is 8.5 by 11. Reagan's no more than a 3/4 inch high, if he's that, maybe even half an inch tall. But in front of him is the mass of people, and at the very end of that picture stands the Washington Monument. If you could get a picture of the Vietnam Wall, at one end of it, towards the narrower end, if you follow that line of the Vietnam Memorial straight ahead, it goes right smack dab to the Washington Monument. What does that mean? I don't know.
Huh.
Secondly, lastly, if you watch JFK, when I first saw the movie, they talked about Garrison meeting a colonel named Colonel X, I think they called him, and he's not identified in the movie. So Garrison, and according to the first words I read, was that colonel was a composite of several people who believed like the colonel. But let's go with the movie now. Stone. In the movie, Garrison climbs up the stairs of the Lincoln Memorial. And when he gets to the top, near the top, it's a rainy day and he's got a cap on and an overcoat. From the left comes Colonel X. And he meets him and they start talking and identifying each other. And then they walk down the stairs, and Stone takes a movie part of that, of them walking down the steps, and then he pans up, and at the end of the photograph is the Washington Monument. Huh. Then when they go across the grass to an open area, they're sitting on a bench, obviously to avoid being detected by people snooping or radios or whatever it is. Several times during that conversation where Colonel X tries to identify the military-industrial complex as being responsible for the Vietnamese War, which, by the way, is a hokum, and I can prove that later if you want, but that's another story. But they're talking back and forth. They sometimes show the thing at a distance, and back of the distance is the Washington Monument in its entirety. And then when the colonel leaves, Garrison walks towards the camera, as I recall. The colonel walks straight towards the Washington Monument. So my theory is that Stone was trying to tell us, the viewer, the Masons and the Washington Monument are involved in the assassination of John Kennedy, but he couldn't say it. So he did it, I think, symbolically. That I have to admit, please don't quote me. I'm saying it's a theory. But notice, there it is. I can't explain it. What does it mean? I don't know.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, too bad Daniel's not chiming in on that, because I know Daniel. I haven't actually seen that movie JFK, and I've wanted to, but I've never actually seen it. So I'm gonna have to look at that.
Please, when you watch the movie, watch for Colonel X or Mr. X, and watch the numbers of times you see the Washington Monument. Now remember, this is in Dallas, Texas. In fact, in New Orleans, where Garrison's trying the case. So what's Washington got to do with anything? But they later identified the colonel as, oh God, boy, I'll tell you, I had his name a minute ago. He was an official. He was in the Air Force. Forgive me, I think it was the Air Force as a colonel, and he was the liaison between Kennedy and the CIA. So this man, Fletcher Prouty, has written a couple of books on this subject. One's called The Secret Team, that talks about, I think in some degree, some parts of the Kennedy assassination. So Prouty might have known a great deal about who really shot our president. Okay, I talked about symbolism for 2 hours.
Good job. Good job there.
Forgive me, it's pretty hit and miss, but I think I covered and tried to explain it as best I can. We can't. By the way, all of these things, many of these things are covered in an 8-hour DVD and called Conspiracy Against Christianity. It's 8 hours long, and many of these are covered. But if you want the condensed form, watch my a video called Vietnam: America's Betrayal and Treason. Some of that's covered in there as well.
Hey, yeah, go. Sorry, I was gonna say, with the founding fathers and all this symbolism and everything else, with the Masons, there's a lot of, Latin, the Latin language. Like I believe the English language is like 2/3 Latin, made up. Do you know Latin at all?
No.
Okay, because I was just curious. I'm looking at a picture of the New York state flag, which is just loaded with symbolism. And I would like to hear somebody interpret that.
Well, give me, if you got a minute, tell me what you see.
Yeah, okay. So, first off, do you know the whole "as above, so below" thing?
Yes, of course, right.
Can you explain that to me, because nobody's ever actually explained it to me?
Okay, there's a drawing in Rex Hutchins' book called A Bridge to Light. Rex Hutchins is a fellow U of A graduate, although he got a PhD. I just got a bachelor's degree. But I met Rex Hutchins, and he gave me his copy. He wrote the book for the Masons. It's the official Masonic book. And there's a drawing there of he calls it an aged man and his reflection. So you look at the picture, and the top picture is an aged man. And he's got a black T-shirt on and a kind of like a sash around his neck, and there's words above it and symbols that don't make sense. And then when you turn it over, it's not a reflection at all. It's the exact opposite. It's everything that's black in the above picture is now white in the bottom picture. And the words are different. The symbols behind it. So Rex Hutchins is lying to us. He knows that's not a reflection. In my video, I show you a picture of reflection of a mountain, beautiful snow-covered mountain on a lake it's glassy. It's early in the morning when it was not a ripple in it, and you could see the mountain, but it's upside down. But it's exact colors and everything else reflected. That's what a reflection. This is not a reflection. So he doesn't explain what the symbols mean, but I don't want to take the next step, but just find it I show it in my video and give you an explanation. I'll let that suffice. It bogs the mind. But what he's saying is that what the God that we believe was above is really the God which is below. That's what he means by it.
Oh, okay.
So
that's interesting. That's interesting because in this picture, or in the New York state flag, at the very, very top of the picture, is an eagle, or a phoenix, whatever it's going to be, or whatever they intend it to be. I don't know, but it's on top of the globe, or of the world, and then you have below that, on each side, on the left side and on the right side of the eagle, is each a woman on each side. One which is blindfolded on, if you're looking at it on your right. I actually just emailed you a picture of this as well. But she's got a blindfold, and she's got the scale to what do you call that for
just justice.
Yeah, justice. Right.
Justice blind, right.
Right. And she's holding a sword in her right hand upward toward the eagle. And then the other one has got this staff in her hand with something on top of it, maybe covering it, and it looks like she's got maybe some sort of crownish thing at her foot. And then below that, it says Excelsior, which is Latin. I'm not sure what that means. And in between all of what I just explained, in the very center, it's almost like a shield. That's it almost reminds me of like a gold fringe around like a flag or something. And it's got a sun in it with boats and water I don't know. It's a very interesting picture. It obviously means something.
Yeah. Well, all of it. As I said, our state flag does as well. Although there's no tonight, I can't find an explanation of what it means, but you can infer if you can figure out what it means. It means the Masons. The Masons still run our state.
Right.
So I'm just, once again, I'm just encouraging you to start looking for 33s and 32s and 13s, and you're going to find them everywhere.
Right.
No, not everywhere, but I mean, far more. If you start looking for it, it's in everything. Newspaper articles, and like we talked about, the new All-Star game is going to have 33 players and 13 pitchers. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? They've increased the numbers to 33 and 13. 33 floats in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day or it's Christmas Day parade. 33 cars in Indianapolis. What are they telling us? I don't know. I think I know, but it's one of those things where you start getting, people think, it's bad enough trying to explain simple stuff, but getting a symbolism, I tried to give you the easy ones. They're simple, there's probably more that I could have covered that I didn't think of, but I just pulled this stuff out, is what you said, what you wanted me to cover. I just went looking for it about a week or so, and I kept looking till I found it, and I got a stack of stuff to go through. So I had some fun.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Do you know a lot about Freemasonry, or?
Yes.
I mean, I feel like we could go forever on that, but I don't. I know a guy at my church. I'll just say this: there's a guy at my church, and before I started to actually open my eyes and realize some of the stuff about the secrets of America and. Before I came into that kind of paradigm, I was taking a leadership class at my church, and the guy that was running the leadership program, he gave us his testimony, and he had it printed out. I still have it, but it was interesting because I was just coming into hearing about all this stuff, about the Masons and everything. It turns out, in his testimony that he was a Mason.
Okay.
And he, not just a Mason, he was a 33-degree Mason.
He admitted that in his...
Yes, and in his letter, or in his testimony that was typed up, he actually included that he was a Mason, and that one night, God gave him the proper words to say in a dream to write into a letter to quit the Masons. And so he quit. And interesting enough, I mean, he didn't mention this, but I'm friends with his son, and he basically this gentleman has MS, and he never had MS until 4 years after he quit the Masons. And they think that it might have been from a flu shot, but it's interesting that only 4 years after he quit, a very high ranked position in the Masons, that he would get MS, and now he's in a wheelchair.
Oh my goodness!
But he's a great dude. I mean, I really enjoy him, and it's really sad to see him deteriorating. But
yeah, well,
God bless him for quitting.
Amen. He certainly had the major decision. I presume he did it for the right reasons.
Oh yeah. Okay, real quick, just since we're still on record, just real quick, thank you for coming on the show, and spending the time talking about symbology.
It was my pleasure. I want to thank you as well, because it's not very common to get people even to discuss this. In fact, it's the first time I've ever discussed this on a talk show. It's always other stuff I cover, but I appreciate it because it gave me a chance to put this stuff together and even look for it and combine things now that I hadn't. I hadn't planned on combining, but now I've got to. So thanks very much. We'll talk to you in a few more minutes.
Thanks. All right, welcome back, and that was quite an enjoyable conversation for me. I think Dan took a little bit of a snooze there, but he was definitely feeling under the weather when we recorded that as well. Yeah, to sum up a few thoughts, I guess one of the bigger things that stuck out to me when I was listening to him talk was about the lion's paw and the hidden hand. You see Lenin and Stalin and all these people giving this secret hidden hand, and you start to look around and you start to notice it on like Time magazine, like you said, that issue with Pat Robertson. But I've even noticed it on musicians out there because, I'm a music geek, and I'll reference this. It's so funny. My buddy, who I was in a band with, sent me a little care package. Sometimes, like once a year, we will actually send out some physical mail to each other. Like if we find a cassette or like a CD or whatever, just to kind of, hey, I'm still your buddy, and I know that you're gonna laugh at this kind of deal. But so my buddy sent me an Erykah Badu single CD here of the song "Bag Lady" from the album Mama's Gun, and on the very front cover of it, you could probably Google it. But Erykah Badu is giving the hidden hand straight up. Not to mention she's wearing that Egyptian wrap cloth, on top of her head. So, and then I also noticed in the album to John Legend's Get Lifted, his very first record, he's giving the lion's paw as well, the hidden hand. If you open up the booklet, open up the CD case, and you look at the first page on the left there, that was kind of interesting. And then as I was, reading up on some of the initiations in the Masonic tradition, I know that you can look it up. I know that they blindfold people when they take an oath. They have the person blindfolded, and then they also lift or roll up the left pant leg, which is really interesting. And so I heard somebody on YouTube when I was going through videos of stuff, and I heard him describing that. And if you've listened to the intro to this episode, if you watch the video on YouTube of it, because I always make a video version on YouTube as well of just the intro video with the music and everything. And there's I was always wondering, like, why does LL Cool J, this is back in the 90s, mid 90s, why does he roll his left pant leg up? And then it kind of clicked, like, this is totally hyper speculatory, but I mean, we all know that they're all connected. I mean, Shaq has his Masonic ring, and there's a lot to be said about the hip hop culture. You got the Jay-Z thing and all that stuff, but you look at LL Cool J in the Loungin' video, and it's like sunglasses, so that could symbolize your blindfold, and then you have your left pant leg rolled up, just to let you guys know I'm initiated into the club. And LL Cool J has been pretty huge since the 80s. I mean, he's dwindled a little bit now, but I mean, it's kind of interesting in just peering around and checking these things out. I thought it was kind of intriguing. And I guess a good segue, as I was mentioning Erykah Badu, I had a conversation recently with Carl Teichribb for next month's episode for July, and we talked about the Green Movement and stuff, and then I think toward the end of it, we talked a little bit about Erykah Badu and D'Angelo and the Roots and Common and a bunch of artists like Jimi Hendrix and stuff, because we were talking a little bit about the transformative events and stuff. So that's kind of funny how the CD just came to me of this Erykah Badu single. So you'll get to hear that next month. And as far as other plans, we don't have any more interviews pre-recorded right now, but we're working on definitely another health episode. Have some other ideas for episodes. Want to touch on homeschooling, psychiatry. That's about it on the list right now as far as searching out who to talk to. So in other news, we got a nice email the other day, and I just thought I'd read it because it's very encouraging, and we don't have a lot of time to put into the podcast right now. So it's very encouraging to hear back from you guys. And so this guy, Wildman, or girl, I think it's a guy. I haven't read it since last week, but I did save it here. And he said, I listened to your interview with Rob Skiba, and I love listening to the men you are mentioning, such as Kent Hovind, Ken Ham, Chuck Missler, L.A. Marzulli, and even the show It's Supernatural. I'm a 51-year-old disabled veteran who has been in Southern Baptist churches during my youth, and I then backslid as an adult and had my wild years. About 10 years ago, God grabbed me and drew me back in. Now I am non-denominational and I study on my own. I am also a fan of Trey Smith too. I have been a musician since I was a child and also a vocalist. I am an avid bass player, and I would love to get involved to glorify God with my musical and gift of gab skills. I heard you asking for people who wanted to get involved to send you an email, so here I am. Let's praise God together. I am from Worcester, Ohio, and I want to serve God. So, hey, Wildman, thank you very much for emailing us. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm working on right now with God's Property Media. There's a website being built for that. I'm working on my my personal website, and I'm working on a band website for Slave to Servant. But if anybody's listening to this that is in a band that's, doing it to glorify the Lord and writes avid, Christian songs, based off of Scripture, feel free to send an email to godspropertymedia@gmail.com. We are putting together another compilation. This one will be a little different. It's not a benefit or anything. It's just a compilation. It'll be $5. We're going to try to get as many songs as we can on it. Bunch of artists, but hopefully we can get some more new artists. A lot of things planned. The new Dissident Prophet album's coming out soon. I just released my soundtrack to Leonard Ulrich's film, The Illusion of Money. So if anybody is interested in downloading that, I think I've gotten one download so far, but it's only $7, 15 songs, and so that's a relatively cheap price. And you can kind of get a sneak peek at what his film's going to sound like in the background as he narrates through the history of money, what it was biblically and what it is today. And it's definitely excited to be able to glorify the Lord in a different way other than even singing, from the composing aspect. And I just praise God that he allowed me to be a part of Leonard's film, as his film was such an integral part of, why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So, you can go to godspropertymedia.bandcamp.com, and you can purchase the Ho Vindication album and the Illusion of Money soundtrack there for, I think, $5 and $7 in that order that I mentioned them. There will be more releases that are being worked on right now. If you're a DJ or producer and you'd like to, you have skills in the realm of remixing, there are artists that would love to get you their stems, me included, for different digital singles that are going to be coming out in the future. So if that's something that the Lord has given you a gift in, let me know. godspropertymedia@gmail.com is my email address. And so lots going on with that. If anybody out there knows of any experts on psychiatry and psychology and can speak about them maybe from a Christian perspective, and do an amazing job at kind of exposing that whole fiasco, I would love to talk to somebody in the coming months about that. If anybody knows about Common Core and homeschooling, that's another thing I'd really like to hear about. Also, anybody on gardening, that would be really cool. And then I'm also hoping to talk to somebody very extensively about the 501c3, incorporated church thing. So if anybody knows of anyone, just email godspropertyradio@gmail.com, and we'll try to get in touch with those people. And again, thanks to Ralph Epperson for coming on our show for episode 21. Again, his website is Ralph-Epperson. That's RALPH-EPPERSON.com. Many books on there. Check them out. Great dude. Dan should be back to join me on episode 22 with Carl Teichribb. And until next time, don't buy into what the world is selling.
Thank you for listening to God's Property Radio. We thank you for your prayers and support. Until next time, don't buy into what the world's selling.
You know, man, it is everywhere. Everywhere you look, you've got the two. It's a pair, really, that I've discovered. Most of my research centered around Nimrod for a while there, but you can't get away from Semiramis, Isis, Ishtar, Inanna. You know, while Nimrod has a number of names, he's got a lot of names associated with him. So does she. You know, they go together. You know, it's like Reese's peanut butter cups, you know. You know, you can't have it without the chocolate and the peanut butter, you know.
Yeah.
She's everywhere. Yeah, I believe that is I think it's in Chris Pinto's video in New Atlantis that the whole purpose of America is to bring about Babylon. The Babylon
exactly.
on the Euphrates River that you were talking about, but it starts here.
Yes, and I find it incredible that someone like George Bush would use occult phraseology to describe what his presidency was going to be about. For example, he used the word, or the phrase, angel in the whirlwind. Okay, unless you studied the occult, you would not know what that phrase means. For example, if I used the phrase, Chris, I'm a bachelor to the rapture and I'm not part of the frozen chosen, you know what I'm talking about. The average person on the street wouldn't. Okay, so the angel in the whirlwind represents Metatron, who is an ancient Kabbalistic goddess, the god of Shekinah, or glory. And where do we see that in the Bible? Let's see. Well, we see the Shekinah glory coming from the temple. And what did you see in the War on Terror? Well, you saw shock and awe, right? It's just a play on words, tomato, tomato. They're insulting your intelligence when they put occult phraseology in your face. So they're delivering a message that offers plausible deniability and lets those on the inside know what's about to happen at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, it's the symbols conceal, symbols reveal. They conceal from people who don't have eyes to see, and they reveal for people who do have eyes to see, or ears to hear, as the case may be.
Exactly. Now, how do we convince the average Christian about this? I mean, where do we start? I mean, we like to have our national flags in our churches, and that feels, like we are divinely ordaining our nations. But the same people who like those flags in the front of our churches better go back and study the pattern of the early church. I mean, do you think the average house church during the reign of Caligula would have a Roman standard in it? I don't think so. Okay, so while nations are established and authorized by God, I wouldn't worship them. I pray for them. I don't trust them. They're not worthy of my trust. But it's the best thing that we've got for now until Jesus comes back.
Yeah. Man, I was thinking about, I'm reading my wife got me a book called Myths from Mesopotamia, the creation, flood, Gilgamesh, and other ancient texts. And I've quoted from them before, and I've looked at them here and there over the years in the course of my research, but I've never actually sat down and read through all of them. And I'm a little more than halfway through the book. It's published by Oxford World Classics. And something jumped out at me the other day, and I have to give credit. I can't remember this guy's name, but there's a guy on YouTube he's obsessed with Saturn. I mean, the guy puts out like 1 million videos on Saturn, and just like everything ties to Saturn. But at first, some of these people, you think, yeah, this guy's kind of a kook. But the more you listen to him, the more you go, like, wow, you start to see it yourself, And one of the things that I found looking through the Sumerian epic and in the glossary at the back of the book, they describe Anu, A-N-U, as the head of the older generation of gods. Well, essentially the equivalent of that would be Kronos in the Greek. And Kronos is Saturn the Roman name for Kronos, the head of the Titan head of the gods that produced Zeus and the others, And so I started thinking about that and learning how our English language developed from the Gaelic and some of these other more primitive languages, and people like John Dee and Francis Bacon and others who are behind the kind of the formalizing of the English language. And we start to realize that our words, it's called spelling, okay? I mean, first, it's spelling, When we're spelling, and I'm thinking about the creative force that words have. I mean, the universe was created with words, so and God made us in His own image. So I believe that I'm not talking about blab it and grab it and name it and claim it, but I am talking about the creative force that words have. And just thinking about these things and spelling and whatnot, and you start thinking about words like soldier. Sol is the name of our son, S-O-L. Dyer. So
that's a good one. That's a new one on me. Yes.
A soul dyer. I mean, I want to talk a little bit about this too. There's kind of a little segue here, talking about all the wars and how they've been financed by both sides. And it really, to me, it's all human sacrifice. And when I hear, and there's power in that human sacrifice, something is released in the spiritual with the sacrifice. That's why all the demonic and the gods of the ancient world, and sacrificing to Moloch and everything. And they were always sacrificing to sun gods. So here we got our soul dyers going around the world fighting for a lie, all based on a new world order.
Yes, and when the soul dyers get trained, they are in the infantry.
Oh, brother.
Oh, yes.
Man. I'm telling you, man, when you start thinking this way, you start looking at the English language totally different.
Yes, and what do what do soldiers do? They are, according to high-level soldiers or high-level commanders within the United States forces, they are enforcers for the bankers. I'm not saying that. Okay, high-level military officers are saying that, and so as the enforcement arm for bankers. They are essentially judging the nations. Well, a judge sits on a bench. Bench is a Latin word for bank, which controls the flow of the liquid currency. Right?
Oh, man.
And what you want to do is, if you testify in front of the judge, you have to open up the floodgates.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on and on, so it controls the liquid assets, the flow of your currency. I mean, you're right. Words are used to reveal and conceal. And when a judge asks you, do you understand? What the judge is saying, do you stand under the authority of this court? You volunteer to give up your sovereignty when you say, yes, I do. And you didn't even know that.